Hi, before we start this video, I want to give a disclaimer. Me and Silver have no ill will towards the writers, Devil Artemis, the VAs, or anyone involved with the production of this Death Battle episode. I know the Death Battle team were really trying their best with this episode. Which, yes, me and Silver will be critical on this episode. But despite the problems with this episode, me and Silver still have a great amount of respect for the Death Battle team. And if anyone thinks about using this video to be an asshole or insult any current or former members of the Death Battle team,
get the fuck out of my sight before I demolish you.
With all that said, on to the review. So with Death Battle 24 ended off with Among Us vs. Fall Guys, Death Battle fans were pretty happy. I mean, the first 4 episodes of independent Death Battle, they were pretty good. You know, minus a few flaws with 2 episodes. But for the most part, Death Battle 25 was going to look much more hype than ever. And for the most part, that was pretty true. Like, most of them were good. But there was one little episode that wasn't exactly great. You may have noticed I didn't talk about it briefly, but you know, you're going to hear my thoughts about the full script of Asura vs.
Here comes a new challenger!
Did you really think you could review this episode without me?
Yes. You also broke my roof. You dickhead.
The door wouldn't open.
Oh wait, that's right, I changed the locks. You could have knocked. Like, I could have answered for you, like if you knocked.
I did, but you didn't answer. So I made my own way in. Why did you change the locks anyway?
Retro.
Oh my fucking god, what did he do to get locked out this time?
You don't want to know.
Right. Anyway, I'm here to review this episode whether you like it or not. And I know more about God of War than you, so maybe it would be beneficial for you to have me here.
Alright, fine. So, if you saw my Death Battle 24 ranking video, which I hope you have, because if you didn't, I'm coming to your house next week. Anyway, I usually have notes on what I like, what I dislike, a bit confused on the episode, rewatch it, and then check if I have my opinions changed or if it helps focus my mind. Just so I record and then say whatever the hell I want in the script, you know? But if you couldn't tell, this is very different. As you can tell by the fact that Megasilver3000 was here.
Hello.
So this will be the first of possibly many fully scripted rundowns on some Death Battle episodes.
Wait, why do I feel like this is a reference to another YouTuber?
Focus, Silver. Anyway, this is so far the only episode of the indie era to leave me disappointed! If anything, I even bought Asura's Wrath. Just be prepared. Prepared for this episode. And, well, Silver had me, X, and Retro play through God of War 2018 for a year. So if anything, I was the most prepared. And if anything, this matchup was requested. Coming in second place twice on 2 fan polls for fans to, well, vote for. Only losing to a long requested matchup and Warner Bros. Being stupid. Yet so ironic that this episode happened before Coyote vs. Tom. Even so, ending off Death Battle 24 with Among Us vs. Fall Guys, and the next episode of Death Battle 25 would be Kratos vs. Asura. If anything, this episode was going to be a big event, which makes it all the more bad that this episode flew so high, it came crashing down like Asura and Kratos down in hell.
As for my history with the God of War franchise, here it is. Back in 2018, I was hearing about this new God of War game, and witnessed many of my relatives playing this game, and I was intrigued to try it out. Which I would not get around to until 5 years later. Anyways, as of right now, I've played through every mainline entry, so I will be here to back it up with my knowledge and see how this Death Battle episode fares. And as far as my knowledge for Asura, part 6 of the Let's Play series is as far as my knowledge goes, because these guys played 2 episodes without me.
Sorry. Alright then. Why don't we start off with the God of War's second analysis in Death Battle.
Believe it or not, I believe that this episode actually gets off to a good start, with a fairly accurate analysis on Kratos. Now, there are some hiccups, such as how they explain the rules and logic of Kratos' world. They explain it in a way that makes it seem like the Greek and Norse worlds are the same, and that Atlas is holding up the entire universe, and that there's a world tree connecting everything. However, that's not fully clear in the games that the Greek and Norse mythologies abide by the same rules, with how they work and how the universe was created. Other than that though, I would say that they did a good job going over Kratos in terms of his personality, story, weapons, and what he's capable of. They really went thoroughly through every chapter of Kratos' life, from his beginnings as an ambitious but arrogant Spartan general, his pledge to Ares, his path of vengeance resulting in the destruction of Greece, and finally his path of redemption and becoming the Norse land's god of war and a god of hope. They really make it clear that Kratos, even during his Greek days, is not one-dimensionally driven by mindless anger, and that Ares tricking him into killing his first wife and daughter, and being permanently marked by their ashes, as Boomstick best puts it, he was understandably, really pissed off. My only nitpick with his analysis is that they left out the events of God of War Ghost of Sparta, the second PSP game, which I feel is a very significant chapter in Kratos' journey. That game added further subtext to the original trilogy, and helped us further understand how Kratos reached his mental breaking point after the loss of his mother and brother due to the efforts of the Olympian gods to avoid their doomsday prophecy, that they would eventually bring upon themselves for screwing with him all his life. But other than that, I would say that Kratos' analysis was very well done. They at least covered all the important stuff, the weapon's origins and powers, and what's going on in Kratos' head. From his anger, revenge-driven self, to his wiser and calmer self that now uses his anger to protect the innocents, and his newfound family in Midgard. Now over to you, Shimoda.
In comparison to Kratos' old analysis from 2011, holy fucking shit, that is a long time. But yeah, this analysis does a better job being well-paced, starting from the Greek era Kratos, talking about his weapons, then how Kratos changed in the Norse era, with the mention of his new axe and Spartan rage, then his feats, and closing off on how Kratos became not a god of war, but now the god of hope. And yeah, this analysis is better covering Kratos with jokes like Thor Ragnarok and calling Atreus boy. Though honestly, admittedly, it feels weird they don't call him by his actual name. I'm not against Boomstick saying it, but it feels weird that Wiz doesn't call boy Atreus. But it does lead to this funny joke from Boomstick.
And now the boy is a man and also a bear.
Okay, if anything, that gets a chuckle at me. Although, my issue with this analysis is, well, Silver said they don't cover Greek era Kratos too much. I mean, they leave out some important details that anyone who's never played God of War, like myself, well, the older games, might not get the best understanding. I mean, to be fair, we do have a good understanding, just maybe a bit more. But another issue I find weird is, well, they do talk about his Greek era weapons, but only the Blade of Chaos and Olympus, in my opinion, have more relevance, because the other ones they mentioned don't show up much in the Filmation, and it's kind of weird to talk about it much. I get they kind of have to, but like, you're gonna focus on Norse era Kratos, so like, I don't really get it. It feels a bit weird, but I mean, it's better than whatever the fuck they had to put in a Michael Jackson joke. Like, seriously, what the fuck was going on in 2011? Then there's Asura's analysis, and I want to just say, 10 out of 10? It's a 10 out of 10 analysis. Like, this analysis gets the character of Asura. I sure as hell hope they don't mischaracterize him. I hope they don't do that whatsoever in the Filmation. But I do like these short details like Asura likes hot springs and quicktime events with women.
Just like Kratos!
Of course! That's the real reason they're fighting. They are honey. Or how he should have been in Marvel vs. Capcom, but no, we get
Know your fucking place, trash.
But anyway, this analysis does a great job covering Asura as a character, going through his story from start to finish, detailing how his mantra works, and as well as highlighting his humanity. Because let's face it, the other gods don't have much humanity. I mean, their humanity looks like this. What's that? You see a blank screen? That's because it doesn't exist. And if anything, it shows why Asura, even though he may look like a weapon, his anger is a shield for not only his daughter, but also for the people he protects. And once he kills that god, I cannot pronounce his name, his anger is finally gone. Mithra is saved. Oh yeah, and we get to see funny Street Fighter reference and Ryu getting kicked in the balls. That is the funniest part. I love it here. And there's also this bit here.
But true to his nature, Asura was literally too angry to die.
Like, I just really like. I know it's not from Asura's rap, but do I look like I care? I just like the fact it's here. So yeah, if you couldn't tell how Silver thinks Death Bell did a great job with Kratos, I say Death Bell did a fantastic job with Asura. They cover Asura's story really well, how he fights, his many transformations, and he hit in for both analysis, just as amazing as usual for modern day Death Bell. Gotta say, Death Bell's on a roll today. Nothing can stop me. Nothing can stop me whatsoever. I got nothing else to say. Silver?
I will say, I have to agree, even with my limited knowledge of Asura's Wrath, I still feel I get the general idea of his character and personality, and the Death Bell team did a very good job at researching his character and backstory. In contrast to how Kratos was consumed by his anger during the Greek era, Asura's not a brainless killing machine, and is more in control of his anger and uses it to fight for the innocent and protect his loved ones, just like Kratos would eventually learn to do in his Norse days.
And just before the fight begins, I just want to say, I think Boomstick's saying,
It's time for a dead battle!
that is cute. But that just leaves the fight. And when... In a weird case of being the opposite of Joker vs. Giorno, Kratos vs. Asura's fight-mation, it wasn't good. Now, it's not terrible, don't get me wrong, but that teaser back in July of last year, it showed a good bit of promise. Kratos hearing different voices from the past, even one from Asura, and then Asura comes in, flames behind him. That teaser left so much to the imagination for what Death Bell could do with this fight-mation and its story. And while yes, this teaser was made before production even began on this fight, I'm about to be honest, I think this was a really bad move. As I feel this intro kinda did a bit more harm than good. Like, it made people more hyped for the episode, and made people's expectations go really high, only for that fight-mation drop really harder than that one time Kratos got really busy.
Which time? I honestly went in not really knowing what to expect. Again, keep in mind I'm not the expert on Asura, though I guess I was expecting Asura to haunt Kratos with his past based on the trailer. And Zeus's voice haunting Kratos, though they are reused lines from the games, it still made for an intriguing opening. Shame it wasn't used in the final version.
Instead, Asura shows up to Asura's house. Yeah, there's two Asuras. But instead, Asura shows up to Kratos' house with the flames of disaster.
How many times are people gonna show up to my house uninvited? I just got this roof fixed! Twice!
But when Kratos gets up, suddenly Asura's not there, along with the flames. Then Kratos just gets suddenly teleported to Gaia. But the fight-mation implies that Mithra did it, but last I checked, I don't remember Mithra ever doing it in the game. Anyway, we see Kratos then punch some guys up from Asura's Wrath. Asura shows up and he sees Kratos and it's like, oh my god, it's the god of war. And I know people have issues with Asura, attacking Kratos for being in Gaia, but I could believe Asura is going to attack Kratos because the fight-mation implies he knows of the Ghost of Sparta stories, or at least the God of War. This more or less means to me he's talking about God of War, not 2018 version, talking about the older ones. So if anything, I could believe why Asura would attack Kratos. Now Kratos is trying to tell him to stop, but that doesn't work. But you know something? My issue? Mithra. Let me ask a good question. Why didn't Mithra stop this fight? Answer me that question, please, viewers. Please, answer me that question. I want to know why, because, she could have just said to Asura, this man saved me. But nope, this is what we get. Yeah, this intro just sucks. Sure it is cool that Asura tells her to run away, but, it kind of stupid that this fight-mation starts with a weird-ass reason if you think about it. It's not the worst intro. Phoenix vs. Raven likes to talk to everyone today, but yeah, I kind of expected a bit better, and Death Bell has been doing a lot better with Death Bell intros,
The start of this fight is alright. Asura avoids Kratos' axe and tries to punch Kratos, only to be stopped by Kratos' shield, then get punched by him only for Asura to quickly punch Kratos back, and have him lose his shield, but Kratos with his Spartan training can resort to defending himself with his wrists. And he gives Asura a good old
This is Sparta!
Also, I feel that it's unfitting that they used the MCU Thor's hammer sound effects for Kratos' axe. The Leviathan axe was not made to be Mjolnir. It was literally made to counter Mjolnir, and giving it Mjolnir sound effects just undermines the whole reason the Leviathan axe was created in the first place. Both gods show each other their rage, and Kratos home runs Asura. Nice reference to his fight with Baldur, by the way. And Asura then does a counter home run on Kratos, and gives him an absolute walloping with his 6 arms form. But then Kratos gets out his least favorite tools, and he tries to talk it out with Asura, believing he's similar to how he was during his Ghost of Sparta days.
You let your wrath consume you. I have been down that road before. Shut up! Very well.
Okay, this part, I see what you're doing here. I see where you're going for, but I don't think it works. Kratos seeing a younger version of himself in Asura. I think I see the idea. It's a great idea. But the background and the younger Kratos kind of makes it hard for me to take it seriously when Kratos is trying to tell Asura. And with Asura just saying, shut up, it's like he's denying the truth, but it isn't there. Like, what are you talking about? Why is he saying shut up? And Kratos just sees Asura not listening and just goes, fine. Seriously, there are better ways for Asura to respond. I like to propose something, like, this scene could have been better. Like, imagine the scene, but instead.
You let your wrath consume you. I have been down that path before.
I'm nothing like you, Ghost of Sparta.
I see. Very well then.
Also, yeah, young Kratos' model has a very blank expression here. Like, they probably would have just been better off just using the actual cutscene, since God of War 3 still holds up graphically very well.
I wonder if it still looks so stupid that we would laugh at it and make memes about it, because like, come on, look at that, that's epic rap battle joke, I can make that funny joke there. In my opinion, there were better ways to do this scene, as while Kratos telling Asura how they are similar, but at the same time, they are very different, which brings me to the biggest issue with this fight animation, and that is Asura's characterization. Like, throughout the fight, Asura's just punching, shooting projectiles like a wild animal. Look, Asura may not be a strategist, but the thing is, he at least knows what he's doing, and he is shown to use enemy attacks against them. Even with his arms destroyed, Asura will keep on going until he is really dead, which shows not only how formidable he is, but how much he's indestructible. In fact, the storyboards actually show Asura using the Blades of Chaos against Kratos. A shame this is in the final version, though.
Yeah, even though I'm not the expert on Asura here, I have seen enough of the game to get a good gist of Asura's personality, and that he's not the type to seek out violence as an indulgence. He just uses his anger as a weapon to his advantage to fight for what he believes is right. In a way, it's sort of like how some people view Greek-era Kratos as a mindless monster who kills because he feels like it, without knowing how much life kicked him in the ass before he mentally snapped.
After one attack with the blades, Kratos just starts using the spear. You know, hitting Asura with a bunch of them, but then Asura sends more projectiles over to him, but Kratos, he doesn't need more projectiles. So he gave it back to Asura. But for real, that was cool. And he did that without that golden fleece, and I only know about that because of PlayStation's All-Stars Battle Royale.
Asura gets out infinite arms, so Kratos retaliates with infinite spears, and a taste of his own Spartan wrath. Asura starts falling, and then he sees Mithra crying, fueling his determination to get back up.
Okay, a few things. One, Asura should not be able to enter this form, since Asura would have the mantra reactor thanks to his brother-in-law, not only to save the world, but to also, you know, make sure that form doesn't come out. Hi, future Shimoda here, so a quick correction. I said that the mantra reactor doesn't allow Asura to access his berserker or wrath form. Upon looking back at Asura's wrath and replaying it, yeah, I have no clue where I found this claim or met this up, so disregard what I just said there. Anyway, back to me and Silver raging. And to that line. While done very well by the VA, it doesn't work since Kratos didn't intend to make Mithra cry. He was just trying to defend himself, so why? But I'll give it this much, it's better than chapter 11.5. Oh god, I had to talk about that chapter again. Then the two transport to another dimension. Okay, is this a theme with this fight animation? Kratos tries to freeze Asura, but with no luck. So he KO punches him away, but we get a big shot. Asura enters his Destructor form and slowly punches towards Kratos, who does Asura stance when Asura was fighting against what?
Though I do like the nod to the European version of God of War 1, where Kratos smiles sadistically before he burns a zombie. Even if it wasn't an intentional reference, it's still a funny one that got a chuckle out of me. I mean, just look at them side by side. You can't unsee it.
Excuse me, but why did you reference the Wyzen scene? Look. I know, Silver knows, you know, the Wyzen scene is one of the most iconic scenes in Asura's Wrath. But just because it's iconic doesn't mean it always works. Just remember, in the context of the game, Wyzen transformed into his big boy form because he thought size equals strength. But as Asura showed to a Wyzen, no, that doesn't work. So why would Asura do the same thing here? Like, why? Oh, and Kratos was able to stop Asura's attack so effectively compared to Asura, who lost 6 limbs from Wyzen just using his finger. Let me repeat that. His fucking finger. But Kratos, he stops Asura's entire fist, and it cost him nothing.
I guess picking up heavy things and putting them back down really is an effective workout routine.
This just makes Asura look like a chump compared to Kratos. I don't think that's what Death Bell wants you to think of Asura. In fact, the storyboards show that Kratos was actually struggling holding Asura's fist, and Asura progressed to punch him further and further. But we'll get back to those storyboards. Third, and more importantly, after Kratos punches Asura, what does Asura do? Does he A, does a punch again, B, gets stuck in a lot of end lag, C, jump off a diving board, D, thanks for the tip helpline. If you guessed B, you're correct. Asura does nothing. In fact, Kratos throws his spears at Asura and multiplies them a lot, so it hits them infinite number of times. So Kratos tells Asura that death hasn't earned him yet, but he deserves a worthy end, and use the Blades of Chaos to get over to him, and then use the Blade of Olympus to stab Asura's Sonic the Hedgehog. Asura just does nothing in this form, and this is Asura's final form. It should take more than a punch, a bunch of spears, and a sword to defeat him in this form. But all it did was give Kratos a bigger hitbox, and that is not an advantage you want to give to someone who's known to kill a lot of things that are much bigger than him.
Remember when Shimoda mentioned how they went through a lot of the Greek-era weapons for Kratos? Well, he doesn't use any of them with the exceptions of the Blade of Olympus and the Blades of Chaos. Now it does make sense since this is Norse-era Kratos that they're using, and by that point, his Greek-era weapons have long been destroyed, though it does make it kind of pointless for them to go through those weapons if he doesn't have access to them. Maybe they could have put a spin on Valhalla's manifestation properties, and used that as an excuse to give Kratos all of his Greek powers and weapons along with his Norse weapons, but then again, that would probably give Kratos a bit of an unfair advantage. And even without them, Kratos is still well able to hold his own against Asura with the weapons and abilities that he has by Ragnarok, and the fight does make pretty good use of them. And it allows his rage to shine more since that's been his main strength throughout his whole life.
I do have a feeling it's probably they're focusing on Norse-era Kratos, but mentioning his Greek-era weapons is still weird. I mean, I guess it's similar to how you talk about Darth Vader, but you talk about Anakin Skywalker's fighting style, even though you're talking about Darth Vader. But I guess that's kind of what happens. But here's another issue. Asura, out of his 6 transformations, how many of them really had much use? 3. Only 3. And 3 of them actually did something to Kratos. His base form, his 6 arms, and Berserker form, but honestly I don't know if you can tell the difference between Berserker and Wrath. But as for his other ones, his Infinite Arms one gets one shot quickly right away. His Wrath form, it gets frozen and then just gets punched in the face. And I already talked about what happened with his Destructor form. It just feels like they were speedrunning through all his transformations, and I just have to ask, why bother including some of those transformations? You could have easily removed the Berserker and Wrath form. As I said, Asura can access those forms as long as he has the Mantra Reactor, so why bother including those transformations? And if anything, it feels like Kratos doesn't really take much damage. Yes, he gets punched, but you don't see him bleeding as much or taking as much damage as Asura does, losing his arms. I don't know, I feel like you could have done a little better, maybe show Kratos actually bleeding, you know? Just saying.
The fight reaches its conclusion with Kratos impaling Asura with the Blade of Olympus and saying that he's a monster no longer, and Asura replies that he never was. Kratos sorrowfully walks away as he sees that he has separated yet another family, and eerily, Mithra is holding Asura in a similar way to how Atreus held his corpse in his Ragnarok death prophecy. Kratos then walks away and leaves Mithra be. This scene is also a nice nod to the end of God of War 3, after Kratos destroyed Greece with the mantra surrounding Kratos as he walks away after his not-so-noble deed.
I don't know, like, Kratos just saying you are a monster no longer, I don't think it makes sense. In my opinion, it doesn't make sense because the fight mission clearly shows that Asura attacked Kratos because he thought he was a threat to not only Gaia, but also his daughter. And if anything, he heard Asura tell Mithra to run, and he saw that she was crying because Asura was dying. So, Kratos, question, what do you mean by that? What do you mean? I honestly prefer an idea where I think like Kratos and Asura like get to know each other a bit better throughout the fight. I honestly wish if Kratos and Asura realized who they really were, and Asura asked Kratos to just, protect his daughter, like, which I think could have worked. I mean, Death Battle was done before with Jonathan versus Tanjiro in a similar vein. But, I can say this much. It was better than whatever that original script was. Oh boy, here we go. So the storyboard artist John Michelle, he usually uploads the storyboards on DeviantArt or Twitter. The storyboards show a different picture on the Filmation. You might remember how I mentioned how it showed Asura using the Blades of Chaos against Kratos, or how Asura fights against Kratos without his arms, or when Kratos tells Asura about his past without a funny background and only see rubble.
Wait, you didn't mention that.
Hi, future editor Shimoda here. Again. So, upon looking back at the storyboards, I realized Asura fought a lot better. He actually fights a lot better compared to how in the final fight, he kind of starts sucking after his second combo. Like, he does get a few more hits, but they don't really hurt Kratos, so, yeah. Anyway, back to me again. But there is one thing I'm sure you heard about the original Filmation script. How it horribly bastardized Asura's character. Like when Asura prepared to attack Kratos, he says, like, that line makes no sense because as far as in Asura's Wrath, there is only one god in Asura's Wrath, and it's this guy. The other ones, the 7 deities, they are no gods. They're demigods, if anything. And even so, Boomstick made it clear in the analysis, so why did he say that? Oh, and remember that Wizen scene? Well, guess what? It's even worse in the original script because Asura, for some fucking reason, destroys Gaia. The planet he protects. Mithra, who's on it, and you know what Kratos says to Asura? Let Silver dub it for you.
You betrayed your own planet. You are lost. You are a monster no longer.
There is a reason that last line rubbed me the wrong way. But Asura destroying his planet just doesn't make sense because in the very last chapter of the game, Asura stops a laser coming straight to Gaia from God. But here in the script, Asura just destroys the planet to kill Kratos. Thankfully, Devil Artemis, the animator of this Filmation, saw the original script and was like,
What the fuck am I looking at?
So the fight script got changed. Now, not everything was perfect. Admittedly, like I said, Mithra being added to the Filmation at the beginning wasn't the best idea, as I kind of highlighted earlier. But it's hard to say if the storyboards or the final fight we have is better. Both of them have their pros and cons, but it's hard for me to decide if I prefer how Asura is better portrayed, which I most certainly do prefer, but he kind of sucks at fighting at the second half. While the storyboards, he fights better, but dear lord, that characterization.
But it ain't hard to choose which one's better.
Before we talk about the conclusion, might as well talk about the voice actors and the battle track. Asura is voiced by Christopher Garolo. He does a great job with Asura's battle grunts, and even my second least favorite line in the episode. Like I said, he delivered that line fantastically, and even his calmer lines like,
It's true then, the god of war is on Gaia, but not for long. I never was.
They were done so well, it almost makes me think Asura is actually controlling his anger in the Filmation. almost. And not to mention, he also voices Akuma in Street Fighter 6, which kind of makes it funny because both Akuma and Asura fought each other in the Asura's Wrath Street Fighter DLC chapter. Then there's Hyunsin Muhammad. He does a pretty good job voicing as Kratos. Although his Spartan Rage sounds a little weak, though my favorite lines from Kratos:
Death has not earned me yet, Titan, but you deserve a worthy end.
I gotta say, his Greek era Kratos is an amazing voice. He does it great. That's not to say his Norse era voice isn't good. If anything, he does a good job too with that.
You do not want this fight. You let your wrath consume you. I have been down that road before.
That line in Pacific, as much as that line is good and he does it really well, I had to say that epic rap battle background just makes it too hard to take seriously.
I have to agree, the voice acting is very well done in this episode. Christopher does a spectacular job as Asura, bringing his wrathful persona and soft side. Hyunsin as Kratos on the other hand, I wouldn't say he sounds one-to-one with Christopher Judge's Kratos, but he does a good job giving his own take on both young and old Kratos. And yeah, death has not earned me yet, Titan. That was such a cool callback to Ragnarok and Kratos' philosophy on life. Death can have him when it earns him.
There's Ule, composed and performed by Theirwolf Media, doing the male vocalist, with Donna Corrado performing as the female vocalist.
And the name of the track when translated from Icelandic means wrath or anger. Now this isn't the first Theirwolf Media track called Anger in another language. Compared to other battle tracks in Death Battle, this one's a little more calmer, but also sadder at the very beginning of the track. Using tracks such as God of War 2018's main theme, and In Your Belief, the main theme of Asura's Wrath, which does give the vibe that these characters don't really want to fight each other. But once the second half of the track comes in, it becomes less calm and more sounds warlike, much more grander in scale, using kind of tracks like At Arms from God of War 3 and Asura Unleashed, another theme played from Asura's Wrath, which kind of fits the fight in its bigger scale at that point, until the last 40 seconds where it goes back to its more calmer sounding, but a lot more tragic. And it's sung in Icelandic, but it works for the fight animation, so as a track on its own, it's alright.
This theme does fit the fight very well, as Kratos doesn't want to fight Asura and the latter is trying to protect his daughter. Though he misunderstood the situation. This theme definitely feels more like Asura's, but I do like whenever the male vocalist comes in to add a bit of God of War flair to the song. Overall, sad vibes, good lyrics, fitting for this fight, but as a track on its own, it's alright.
That just leaves Death Battle's conclusion. So, the conclusion. At first I thought they explained 3 of the categories well. Upon multiple rewatches though, I only agree on one of them. For versatility, the weapons and runics that Kratos has would help him keep the distance and drain mantra from Asura. However, I do want to say that Asura's fighting style isn't just punching. Contrasting to how Death Battle and the fight animation shows, in Asura's Wrath he is shown to use headbutt or kicking when he has no arms, as well as he's shown to use mantra projectiles and counters. Often in Asura's Wrath, you can counter upcoming attacks. This is shown when he counters God's projectiles, catch a goddamn bullet, or my favorite example, Argus, extending his long ass sword, and Asura can either catch it and quickly deck him in the face, or literally keep on holding it and break that damn sword. But the other 3 have issues. Let's start with speed. While Asura's speed feat is properly shown, Kratos isn't. They claim he can keep up with the sun god, but they show footage of Kratos blocking the sunlight coming at his eyes. So by that logic, if I block the sun coming at my eyes, I'm almost as fast as Asura. Might as well try!
So, that didn't work out. Like, my eyes really hurt, and I need a drink. Like, let me get my drink of water. What happened? Like, Silver, where are you? Like, I can't find you.
Like, did they forget to show footage of Kratos keeping up and killing this sun god? Wait a moment. Silver, did Kratos ever keep up with this sun god? Like, does he? Nope.
All Kratos did to him was hit him with a slingshot, followed by Perseus doing most of the damage to Helios, and Kratos just finished the job. I mean, Hermes, Baldur, and Damien the Identity Thief were right there as better examples for Kratos' formidability against speedsters. And it goes to show how impressive it is that he has kept up his strength and reflexes in his old age, but blocking the sunlight with your fucking hand does not count as being fast. What was Boomstick drinking when he came to that conclusion?
It is mentioned in the black box that Atlas captured Helios, and Kratos was able to defeat Atlas, which further supports that Kratos could outspeed Helios, which I'm not sure about that, Chief. I mean, maybe okay, but like, again, you showed footage of Kratos just blocking light, which isn't really that great, and you say it's similar to the Big Bang shockwaves, which, okay, sure, the Big Bang shockwaves are actually more believable, since, Kratos fought Kronos, who killed Oros, one of the primordials of the Greek world. So the better question is, why did you mention Helios? You could have just removed him out of that equation, and then we would have no questions.
And then there's experience. This is the easiest category. There is no way they could have fucked this up. Oh, they fucked it up. How is this possible?
Let's cover experience. Asura lived across centuries, obviously a lot longer than Kratos.
And while Kratos eventually learned to control his rage, Asura pretty much always had that control.
So Asura easily takes experience.
No. Asura did not live across centuries. While they mention Kratos has better control of his rage in the Norse games, and Asura always had control over his wrath, despite the fight animation showing otherwise, they gave Asura the feat for experience, because he lived over centuries. Except he was dead over those centuries. Yes, Asura is older than Kratos, but that's only counting for how old his physical being is, not his consciousness. And at the beginning of Asura's analysis, Wiz says this:
Long ago, a demigod fell from the heavens, only to rise from the depths of Naraka after 12,000 years.
After 12,000 years, he's free!
Kratos had much more time to work on controlling his anger since he spent 1,000 years or so wandering the planet. Not that it's Asura's fault, mind you, but it's like they took a look at their ages and assumed that Asura lived longer than Kratos just because he's around 12,528 years old physically, but they forgot to account for the fact that he was dead for most of that time, and mentally he would only be around 28 years old, way younger than Kratos, who is likely around 1,030 years older than him mentally.
And before they talk about power, Wiz says that Asura's resurrections take
Years or whole centuries, days at best.
So they know how long Asura's resurrections took, but how did this contradiction happen? Like, they should know that Asura was dead for 12,500 years, right? And looking at the bios in Asura's Wrath, we at least know how old every character is in the game. Asura is stated to be 28 physically, and clearly mentally. So here's the question. How long has Asura fought for? Well, the game does give us a rough idea of how long Asura has been trained for. As in Chapter 21, in a flashback, Asura and Yasha are fighting against each other, because they always do. Once they finish fighting, Yasha mentions that Durga, Asura's wife, will be giving birth soon, which at least gives us a time frame of minimum of 13 to 14 years. Since Asura has been shown to train with Argus before Mithra is born, it's likely that Asura has been trained longer than that. However, aside from that flashback, the game doesn't give us much. Nothing about Asura's childhood or anything else, so we don't know if Asura has been trained longer before he met Argus. But me and Silver would guess at best that Asura has been trained and fighting for maybe 20 years before his first death. But keep in mind, this is a guess. We don't know how long Asura has been training. He could be training longer, less, we don't know, okay? We only know at best 14 to 15 years. Unlike Kratos, who has been alive for over 1,000 years, and we see in Ghosts of Sparta and Sons of Sparta that Kratos has been trained to become a Spartan since he was a child. A lot longer than Asura has been shown. Not to mention, when Kratos dies, it takes him a few minutes or hours to get out of the realm of dead and back to the realm of living. compared to Asura, whose resurrections take a lot longer, like his first resurrection. 12,000 years it took him to come back. Second resurrection, 500 years. His third and last resurrection took 3 days. Now at best, Asura has maybe 14 to 20 years of combat training, while Kratos has been trained since he was a child, and by the end of God of War 3 he's over 50, and at the end of Ragnarok he's over 1,000 years old, and has fought a huge variety of creatures from both the Greek and Norse mythologies.
As well as other mythologies according to the comics.
So it still baffles me that Asura got experience and not Kratos. It just doesn't make sense. But wait! There's worse! Like the power category. Yo, who the f*** is this guy?
That is Freyr from God of War Ragnarok, and I have no clue why, but according to Death Battle, Kratos compares to this guy, because he was strong enough to hold back Ragnarok for a few seconds. But like the Helios comparison, it doesn't make sense. They determined that Kratos' strength is equal to Freyr, because of how? You wanna guess? A cookbook, of all things!
They're more saying how dense the world tree is from the cookbook.
And I may not have played the story from beginning to end in a long while, but I don't recall them ever fighting each other throughout the story, so I don't really see how their strength is comparable.
And again, they showed Asura clearly is able to kill God. But here's the thing. I could see Wiz's point that Kratos has fought beings like Asura who have taken on godlike beings. The problem is, they show Kratos killing Helios in a cheap way possible and really not matching his speed, and saying he matches the strength of some guy I don't know. However, Death Battle, you could have saved yourself the trouble. If you just focus on Kratos, killing Kronos, who killed one of the primordials, who created the Big Bang Theory, which created the Greek world. Not only does that cover how fast Kratos is, but also covers how powerful a Big Bang is, which could be a point on how Asura wouldn't be far off from the foes that Kratos has fought and defeated in the games. Okay, I think we're done.
But what if?
Alright, the alternate ending.
Asura gets back up, and Kratos tries to use the Tiger Drop technique. But he does not know that 1, to execute that move, you have to press the R1 and triangle buttons, not the circle button. And 2, he is not a Yakuza character. Kratos gets sent to Elysium, where he's reunited with his daughter Calliope. They hug, and Boomstick states that that's his pitch for Asura's Wrath 2. Honestly, I think this was a respectful alternate ending. It should satisfy Asura fans, and Kratos' fans can feel happy that Kratos finally gets to see his daughter again with his own eyes, and that despite the last time they saw each other, his daughter has found peace and still loves him. So it doesn't feel like a traditional cheap cop-out ending, just to satisfy Asura's fans. But mainly it gets a pass because of the punchline of the joke that it's Boomstick's pitch for Asura's Wrath 2. If Asura's Wrath 2 actually does happen, and it's a God of War crossover, I would totally be down for that. Capcom and Sony, get on that right now.
Okay, at first when I was scripting and working on this review, I didn't really like this alternate ending too much, but while editing and rewriting this damn review over and over again, I'm more mixed on this alternate ending. On one hand, I really like the idea of Kratos going to the afterlife and seeing his daughter again. It's really nice seeing that. I really do think it's a great way to end off it as a good alternate ending. I don't know how Mimir and Atreus are gonna handle this news though, but on the other hand, Kratos is just
standing here, I realize that I cannot do a tiger drop. I don't know how to press R1 and the triangle button. I'm not a Yakuza character, and this song does not make any sense or rhyme anymore.
And lets Asura kill him for some reason. I'll admit this feels less like an alternate ending and more like an extended ending for the fight mission. Not saying it's a bad idea, but it's still kind of weird for a show like Death Battle to do these alternate endings. That's not even counting for the joke endings that are done on Twitter. But I think as well, it's more because this is Death Battle. The show that usually shows one answer of who would win a death battle, which I could see why some people may not like an alternate ending being on Death Battle. But as it stands, I think this alternate ending is just fine, even if Kratos is just... Okay, that's Kratos vs. Asura. Why don't you start, Silver?
The analysis for both characters were covered very well. They covered all the important stuff about Kratos' character, from the Greek to the Norse era. And I like how they ended off his analysis with his new title, The God of Hope. I would have liked some more Ghost of Sparta analysis, but Asura's analysis, from my understanding, they certainly did their homework on him. But watching his characterization in the fight animation really makes me feel bad for Asura fans. I would still root for Kratos either way, but regardless of how much I know about each character that are pitted against each other in Death Battle, their characterizations should be treated with equal care and respect. There shouldn't be any bias towards one character and throwing the other under the bus. I may be happy with how Kratos was handled in both the analysis and the fight animation, but I want to see him beat Asura on equal terms. Helios was such a piss-poor example of trying to convey how fast Kratos is, and there were better examples throughout the series to show how well Kratos actually does fare up against speedsters. In terms of the fight animation, with this being a highly anticipated and epic death battle between two demigods from series with spectacular action, having a few extra animators could have helped deliver more on the crazy spectacles we were hoping for. But that's not me trying to downplay Devil Artemis's work for this episode, because again, for being the only animator and his efforts to fix Asura's characterization, his work on this episode is commendable, and the animation is still impressive for being done by one person. The analysis did both characters justice, showing a clear understanding of both their personalities and fighting techniques, and the alternate ending did a good job of catering to fans of both characters. But the fight animation really seems to favor preserving Kratos' character, while Asura's characterization got shredded harder than Paper Mario Sticker Star. And the conclusion really makes me question, what are they thinking? With all that said, I give this episode a C rank. There is some good to be said with Kratos vs. Asura, but this is an episode that started with a high promise, only to come crashing down faster than Asura on Frame Your Colleague at Work Day. And that original script and the conclusion especially make me question what went wrong during the production of this episode.
If I'm being honest, I don't know how to feel about this episode. I definitely like the analysis for both characters, as I feel the person or people who wrote these analyses understood who Kratos and Asura are as characters and why people like them so much. Which just makes me wonder how the original fight script even happened, because whoever wrote the analysis clearly wasn't the same person or people who wrote the original fight script and the conclusion. And Devil Artemis did the best he could to fix that script, which, on that note, I want to be clear. For animating 6 minutes as well as the alternate ending and that teaser, I would like to make clear, most Death Battle episodes at best could get to 4 minutes. And it's kinda crazy, because it was done by this guy, Devil Artemis, on his own. But at the same time, the fact that this episode got very controversial for its writing, which led to some people criticizing Devil Artemis for some reason, which doesn't make sense and wasn't even the first time that happened, because people bitched about Omni-Man vs. Bardock's results and again, blamed Devil Artemis. Despite the fact that both episodes, he was the animator, not the writer, or at least the main writer in that case for Kratos vs. Asura. And this, and probably other reasons, is why Devil Artemis is leaving Death Battle after Cell vs. Metal Sonic, which will come out in a few weeks at the time of this recording. Now, would I say this is the worst characterization Death Battle's done? Not close. I mean, there has been other Death Battles that have fight animations that characterize horribly for two characters, but I'm not gonna mention that. Maybe I might mention it in the future. Who knows? At least after Kratos vs. Asura, Devil Artemis got a little help on future fight animations of last year, getting David Fisher back to help out with Master Chief vs. Doomslayer, having Luis Cruz help out with Godzilla vs. Hulk, and he even helped out Luis with Ruby vs. Maka. Yet at the same time, it's sad that Devil Artemis is going to be leaving Death Battle soon. I mean, I want to say this now. He has made amazing fight animations, both on his own and with a team. Fights like Count Dracula vs. Ganondorf, Obi-Wan vs. Kakashi, Yoda vs. Mickey, Vader vs. Obito, Omni-Man vs. Bardock, Hulk vs. Godzilla, and I'm really looking forward to Mel vs. Cell, since Moro is going to be helping him out, as well as another former animator of Death Battle. So, we'll see what happens. But if I had to leave on one last note, I'm gonna say this. I think they should have done Kratos vs. Asura much later on. It should not have been the 5th episode Death Battle tackles in their indie era. I get the idea, it's a very hype matchup and people have been wanting it twice. But here's the thing, I think this episode would have benefited much better if it was left later on. Let's say like later on in Death Battle 25 or maybe sometime in Death Battle 26. As I think the results show that they went a little too early on this episode. But yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say. I'm gonna have to give this episode a D rank. And I really don't feel good about saying that because I really like Kratos vs. Asura as a matchup, and still do even with the episode itself, but I think the matchup itself is really great. So, after this episode, I don't think I have the motivation to do my Death Battle Season 1 ranking video. I have to start all over again. What's the point in doing this? I don't think I need to do this anymore.
Hey, don't throw in the towel just yet, Shimoda. I know how much you love Death Battle. You can do it!
I don't know, like, you saw what happened to my progress with Season 1. It's all gone, like, what am I gonna do? Like, I mean, I don't have the motivation to do it anymore, and I don't really feel, like, what's the point in—
Here, have a cider. This should fix you up.
Fuck yeah! Season 1, here I come!
Well, now that this project is finally done, time to go and review the— God damn it, Shimoda! What did you do?